I'm happy with my positions. I like the tickets, like the numbers, and I trust. I got to believe in the team. Am I worried about it? Yes. If I didn't, if I wasn't invested, would I bet KC +3 if we get there in a heartbeat? I just don't know that we're going to get there because that's going to be an immediate sharp move as far as that goes. I am a little concerned about Buffalo. I'm not laying 2.5 in this game. I've got enough invested. If I was not invested, I probably would not be laying 2.5. I'm more interested in the total in this one, but like still, how scared are you of the Chiefs? This is what we've been waiting for. It's Mahomes on the road in the playoffs. We've not seen this,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Outside of the Super Bowl. So let's see how
Mm-hmm.
that's going to look. The offense has not had any explosion. So are they going to find ways to attack the weakness right up the gut? And what do you do? The Chiefs' rush defense is bad. They've been bad all year. But the Bills' rush defense is also poor. And now they're going to be missing a bunch of linebackers. So are they going to stick with Pacheco? I'm not quite sure. Or is it going to be more of a Kelsey over the middle game? That should be open for them as well. Or are they just going to get caught up and Andy Reid's going to want to pass? Guys, the way I view this is it should both teams should run the ball. The Bills should run with Allen and stick with Cook, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
Chiefs should stick with Pacheco, short passing game with Kelsey. Are both teams going to do it? I don't know. If they follow that script, I do like the under 45.5.
Woo!
I know it sounds crazy. Josh
Yeah.
Allen against Mahomes, high scoring game. Look at the total, guys. There are multiple games this weekend that have higher totals. It's for a reason. I think it's going to be lower scoring.
If the weather is a factor, it would not be ideal for CJ Stroud. I know like the trends with Lamar in the playoffs, but I also think this year could be different. Like, I'm not going to look too much into that. And I think he probably is motivated to do well in the playoffs and remind everyone why he bet on himself and got that big contract finally. So I don't think he's just going to be a no-show. But I do think the Texans will cover the 9.5 or hopefully 10. So I will be on the Texan side here. I mean, the Texans are good. Both of these teams rely on the run game, especially if we're getting some weather. That'll be interesting. But, as we've been talking about, Joe, most of the week, the Texans have been pretty good at defending the run. 6 in rush yards allowed per game, 94.4 per team ranking. So I think this is going to be a fun matchup.
Over 1.5 is plus 160.
I
Like,
love that. I was on that
that
last
is,
week on Friday. It's one of
yeah.
my favorites. And I just, I thought this might hurt him, as a rookie, but now that I think about it, Ohio State, outdoors, like this guy doesn't seem to be fazed by any challenges he's faced so far this season. That if any young quarterback could acclimate to this weather, it's going to be him.
I am in on the prop. The 2 weeks ago against the Colts, we alt betted it. Last week, we were still on the over, did not have alt bets. I won't have alt bets again, just given how ferocious and terrorizing this Ravens defense is. But honestly, even from a matchup standpoint, you just can't ignore Nico Collins' usage right now without Tank Dell. It's been 5 games without Dell now, and he's been targeted on 35% of his routes. He has had 46% of the team's air yards. He's one of those guys like a Amon-Ra St. Brown where you don't even need the extra stats. You could just say, look at the box scores, and all he's been doing is tearing it up as Stroud's primary receiver. So I do think Nico gets there. In terms of the overall line, I know a lot of people disagree. I'm in on the Ravens covering this number, if only because it seems like it's been a while since we've seen the Ravens at full strength. And the last time they were at full strength against the 49ers and Dolphins, they obviously drowned Tua and Brock Purdy for 6 total picks and looked like an entirely different team. Even Lamar Jackson, those 5 touchdowns in his MVP statement game. Not only that, but the key is that the Texans secondary has been camouflaged by poor quarterback play the last 2 weeks. Gardner Minshew wasn't asked to do anything since the Colts were having such an easy time on the ground with JT and Zach Moss, but still 5.5 yards per attempt in that de facto playoff game in week 18. And then last week, of course, we talked about it on the show, a 38-year-old who was unemployed until December. Wasn't buying it at all. But now it's Lamar Jackson, who is literally leading the league in yards per attempt under pressure, just in case you want to account for the Texans getting healthier in these last 2 weeks as well. Not only that, but remember, from their bye on until they ran into Gardner Minshew, they were still a miserable pass defense. Houston was 30th in yards per attempt, 27th in explosive pass rate allowed. So I do like a big day still, weather permitting, through the air for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens to cover.
You know, you guys were talking about how this game is set up for George Kittle. Okay, and George Kittle could eat. How about George Kittle, if I'm reading this correctly here, 16-1 to be the receiving leader in the divisional? I mean, I know there are other sexy names, but if Kittle is supposed to have such big of a game and the tight ends are the Packers struggle against the tight ends, I'd float it a little bit, maybe, a couple of energy drinks on 16-1 for George Kittle could be worth it. And if you're going to be running and you're giving me plus money, I'll take CMC at plus 150. Aaron Jones, who had such a great game against the Cowboys, right? Buck 18, all the touchdowns, 67.5 right now at BetMGM against the third best rushing defense in the league. I don't think Aaron Jones is going to get his. I think they're going to have to throw the ball. Green Bay is going to have to throw the ball to win the game. And I am curious to see, because last week got set up so perfectly for Green Bay. They got the ball, first possession, marched down the field, scored the touchdown, 6-7 minutes off the clock, and all of a sudden, got a turnover. Everything just kind of worked for them. I want to see what happens if the Niners strike first. What happens, and all of a sudden that defense, which is so good against the run, and Jordan Love has to throw. That's what I want to see, and I think they'll go away from it. So I'm not, even though it's a low number, with 67.5, I'm not buying the Aaron Jones rushing props.
Anybody that I was taking a look at for receptions, they're all minus 140, minus 150 to the over.
I know.
I'm like, really? So I just kept going back to yardage. What about the total? So let's see. Dome games, totals go over at a very high rate in the playoffs. 33-18 last 20 years. 33-18. And everything that we're saying, we're criticizing this Lions defense. We're commending the way that the Bucs offense has been rolling. Like the Lions, they had one good half last week, but we know they can get theirs at home. Like, I like this is one of my favorite over. It's probably my favorite over of the weekend.